I never thought a simple message could change the entire rhythm of a morning. I was sitting at the kitchen counter, coffee untouched, staring at my phone like it had somehow betrayed me. The sunlight filtered in through the blinds, falling across her, in a way that made the lines of her face sharper, softer, and somehow impossible to ignore all at once. Catherine, late 40s, impossibly graceful, with a presence that made every room feel smaller, warmer, heavier. She moved around the kitchen with that calm efficiency I'd memorized over months, but today her hands trembled slightly when she reached for the mug. I caught it almost instinctively, and for a second our fingers brushed. I looked away, trying not to let her see the way my heart jumped. I shouldn't be thinking about her like this. She wasn't just anyone. She was my boss's older sister, the woman who had been a quiet, distant figure in my life until now. And yet here she was, leaning against the counter in a soft cashmere sweater, her hair catching the morning light in streaks of copper, a little disheveled, and I couldn't stop noticing. "Did you, sleep well?" I asked, my voice cracking slightly as I tried to sound casual. Catherine looked up, her eyes locking with mine. There was a hesitation there, a pause so loaded I could almost hear the unspoken question about us, about the tension we'd been pretending didn't exist. She smiled faintly, tilting her head, and the corner of her mouth lifted in that way that made my chest tighten. "Better than I expected," she said, but her words didn't match the way her fingers lingered on the edge of the counter. Her eyes flicked to my phone lying face down next to the coffee, and a subtle crease formed between her brows. I knew I should have put the phone away, deleted the messages, her messages, before this morning. But I hadn't. And now, every second felt like walking a line between confession and catastrophe. Did you get my text last night?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my throat went dry. Her gaze sharpened. She didn't answer immediately, just leaned back, crossing her arms over her chest. And for a brief moment, I thought she might turn away, leave the room, erase the tension. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, that tiny, dangerous smile playing on her lips, the kind that said she knew more than she was letting on. "I found the messages," she said, her voice low, measured, almost teasing, but not entirely. She took a slow step closer, and the sunlight caught her eyes in a way that made me dizzy. "How long has this been going on?" The words hit me like a shockwave, the kind that stops time and makes the air heavy. My stomach lurched, and I couldn't meet her gaze, couldn't find words that wouldn't betray everything I felt. For a second, silence stretched between us, thick and fragile, punctuated only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. Her perfume, warm, floral, lingering, wrapped around me, and I realized I'd been waiting for this moment, terrified and desperate at once. Then, as if the universe hated timing, the doorbell rang. Sharp, sudden, insistent. Catherine's eyes widened slightly, her hand resting on the counter, and I felt my pulse spike. Neither of us moved at first, the question hanging between us heavier than the sound outside. The doorbell's echo still lingered in the kitchen when Catherine finally moved, her hand brushing mine as she went to answer it. That fleeting contact, casual to anyone else, sent a jolt through me. I stayed rooted to the counter, pretending to check my phone, even though every part of me wanted to follow her, to hear her voice, to see her smile. I've always had a thing for her. The way she moved through life with quiet authority, the faint laugh that suggested she'd seen too much but still believed in some small measure of wonder. And yet, there was always a boundary I didn't cross. She was older, complicated, carrying herself like someone who'd been hurt more times than she'd admit. I was 23, fumbling through the world, still learning how to speak without fear, and there she was, graceful, untouchable, magnetic. Catherine returned from the door, holding a small package. Her eyes met mine, and for a fraction of a second, I thought I glimpsed something fragile behind the composure, a loneliness, maybe, or regret. She set the package down, the motion slow, deliberate, and I noticed a faint scar along her wrist from years ago, half hidden under her sleeve. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. Some things you learn just by watching. Your friend dropped this off, she said, voice light but uneven. She lingered by the counter longer than necessary, and I could see the internal conflict, her posture stiff, hands occasionally fiddling with the edge of her sleeve. I wanted to tell her everything, about the way I thought about her in quiet moments, about the messages I'd sent and reread, about the nights I lay awake imagining her laugh, her warmth. But there was fear too, the fear of crossing a line, of ruining something fragile, of betraying her trust or my own. I remembered something she'd once told me. Months ago, in passing, sometimes people leave pieces of themselves behind, even if you never notice. I thought of her now, how much of her she'd already left in this apartment, in moments too small to catalog, in glances that lingered too long. I remembered that day at the market. I said suddenly, words tripping over themselves. You found that old book, remember? You insisted I take it. Said it looked like something I'd need. Her lips twitched, a soft, almost imperceptible smile. I remember, she said. Her hand hovered near mine, then retracted slightly, as if testing a boundary she wasn't ready to cross. The air between us felt electric, unspoken tension humming beneath polite conversation. I wanted to reach out to bridge the gap, to let our hands meet and see if the world would shatter or hold steady. My fingers itched, hovering over the edge of the counter. Her eyes caught mine, dark, expressive, and for the first time, I felt like she might see through me completely. My longing, my hesitation, my desperate hope that she felt something too. We stood like that for a long beat, neither speaking, both aware of how close we were, how dangerously fragile the line between desire and consequence had become. And then, a shared laugh broke through, soft, tentative, a tether to normalcy. But our eyes never left each other, and the tension didn't dissipate. It wasn't just a laugh. It was a promise that the moment we were both trying not to feel, the moment we were both trying to ignore, was real. That I was halfway through explaining something ridiculous about my favorite coffee when I heard the click of keys from the living room. My phone had buzzed, but the message wasn't mine. Catherine stiffened beside me. I didn't need to ask. Her body said it all, shoulders tight, jaw clenched, eyes flicking toward the window. My stomach sank. We weren't supposed to be caught. Not yet. Not like this, with tension hanging thick enough to taste. You should probably get that, I muttered, voice low. My hand brushed hers as I pointed toward the living room, and her fingers lingered, longer than necessary, sending a jolt straight to my chest. She exhaled sharply, looking anywhere but me. It's just a message from my husband. Her voice was calm, neutral, but I caught it, a slight tremor, a hesitation that didn't fit the words. I froze. Her husband. The reality of the risk slammed into me like a cold wave. Every message, every touch, every lingering glance, everything suddenly felt heavier. Maybe I should leave, I said, my voice betraying me. I couldn't meet her eyes. I wanted to run, to hide, to deny the pull I felt, but some part of me wanted to stay, to see if she'd look at me the way I'd been imagining, even with the world threatening to collapse around us. She laughed softly, almost nervously. No, stay. Her hand brushed my arm. It was brief, accidental, or maybe not, but it sent sparks straight on my arm. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with everything unsaid. My mind raced. Her husband, my position, what if someone saw? And yet, I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. There was something in the tilt of her head, the slight parting of her lips, that made everything else fade. I started, swallowing hard. I mean, this is wrong, isn't it? My voice was rough, barely audible. Her gaze caught mine. There was no answer, only a pause, a hesitation so heavy it felt like it could crush me. Her hand found mine, almost accidentally, and I didn't pull away. My chest tightened. It was wrong, yes, but it felt inevitable, like gravity itself had shifted. Suddenly, the sound of the elevator outside jolted us both. She stepped back, guilt flashing across her face. I stepped closer, instinctive, desperate, our breaths mingling in the small space. Almost a kiss. But then the elevator dinged again, and the moment shattered. Catherine's eyes darted away, hands clutching the edge of the counter. I can't. Not now. I nodded, swallowing the ache in my throat. I understand, I said, though every fiber of me wanted to convince her otherwise. And yet, even as we separated, even as we pretended to return to ordinary motions, pouring coffee, adjusting papers, shifting weight, the tension remained. It was tangible, a thread binding us tighter than any rules, any fears, any reason. I couldn't stop thinking about her hand on mine, about her lips just inches from mine, about the way she looked at me when she thought no one was watching. Every second felt like a promise and a warning. I want to pull her back. She wanted to pull away. But neither of us could. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this, whatever it was only just beginning, that I couldn't breathe. Not properly. Not since I saw him. Her husband, leaning against the doorway, keys in hand, smiling at some joke she made, oblivious to the storm brewing just a few feet away. My chest felt tight, my hands cold, my entire body screaming that this was wrong. And yet, I couldn't look away from her. Catherine caught my gaze just for a second, and I saw it, fear, guilt, and something else. Something that mirrored the way my stomach twisted whenever I was near her. Desire, longing, maybe even relief that I was here, breathing the same air, even in the middle of chaos. I wanted to step forward to tell her everything, that I've been thinking about her all night, about every glance, every laugh, every brush of our fingers. But the words lodged in my throat. Instead, I just stood there, rigid, trying to act casual, hoping he wouldn't notice how much the air between us had changed. "Did you want to stay for coffee?" I heard her husband ask, casual, but his eyes lingered in a way that made the space between us feel smaller, tighter. Catherine hesitated, her hand brushing my arm. Not enough to be seen, but enough for me to feel like electricity was pulsing through my veins. I started, stepping toward the counter, but she grabbed my wrist lightly, stopping me. Our eyes locked, and in that instant, the world shrank until it was just her and me, a heartbeat away from something irreversible. I felt it, the jealousy clawing at my chest, the sudden surge of fear that someone else could even glance at her, laugh at her, touch her. I wasn't proud of it. I shouldn't feel this way. But it was impossible to stop. She was impossible to stop. "Tom." Her voice faltered. Her husband's attention drifted to a mug he was holding, oblivious, and she took a deep breath. Her fingers tightened around mine, almost imperceptibly. "I need a moment," she whispered, and without waiting for a response, she pulled me gently toward the hallway. The hallway was narrow, dim, quiet. The world outside this small bubble ceased to exist. My chest was pounding, my mind racing. I wanted to ask her if she felt it too, if this pull, this forbidden gravity, was real. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just let my hand linger in hers, my thumb brushing over the back of her hand, memorizing every line, every curve. She stopped, her back against the wall. Her eyes were wide, searching mine, and I could see the war inside her, the part that wanted to step forward, to close the distance, to erase the months of restraint and rules. And then there was the part that feared everything, the judgment, the consequences, the risk. I swallowed hard. "Catherine," I whispered, my voice barely audible. She held up a finger, shushing me without a word. Our breaths mingled. Every rational thought, every rule, every ounce of caution evaporated, leaving only this impossible tension, the heat of our nearness, the pull we could no longer deny. And then, before either of us could move, before a word or a touch could cross the final line, the sound of her husband's voice echoed faintly from the kitchen. We froze, hearts hammering, eyes locked, and everything we'd been suppressing, the desire, the fear, the guilt, hung in the air like a storm waiting to break that I barely had time to catch my breath before everything shifted. Catherine's husband had stepped back into the kitchen, laughing at a joke I hadn't heard. But then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled faintly, and my stomach dropped. He didn't notice me, but I noticed him noticing something else, a message that wasn't meant for me, yet it might as well have been. I froze. Catherine's hand in mine tightened slightly, as if she could feel my panic, my sudden urge to vanish. But then he looked up, and the expression on his face made my chest constrict. Surprise, confusion, and finally suspicion. "Wait," he said slowly. "Catherine, who is this?" The words hit like a hammer. My heart slammed against my ribs. This was the moment I had feared, the line I'd been skirting for months. My hand found hers instinctively, fingers entwining as if we could anchor ourselves against the chaos. Catherine's eyes widened, the carefully maintained composure she carried like armor crumbling. Her lips parted, a soft gasp escaping before she could stop it. It's not," she started, but her voice faltered and the words died in the air. I wanted to say something, anything, to protect her, to shield us, but my voice refused. My mind raced through 1,000 scenarios, none of them good. Then came the twist I hadn't expected. A second phone buzzed on the counter. My roommate, my stupid, nosy roommate, had sent a text meant for someone else, but the preview flashed on the screen in plain sight. "I saw you with her again. Be careful." I felt my stomach drop. He'd been watching, observing, and now, without a second thought, his little message had thrown gasoline onto a fire we hadn't dared ignite. Catherine's gaze snapped to me. "He knows," she whispered, almost too soft to hear. Her hand trembled in mine. My fingers tightened around hers, trying to ground both of us. "I don't know," I admitted, and the words sounded like a confession, a truth we both feared. Her eyes filled with something I'd never seen in them before, raw panic, then frustration, then something sharper, anger at the circumstances, at the secrets, at me. I can't let this ruin everything," she said, her voice breaking just slightly. I wanted to reach for her, to assure her that nothing had to be ruined, that we could still navigate the chaos, but there was no map for this. No instructions for a 20-something who had fallen helplessly for a woman who was older, wiser, married, untouchable. We stood there, hands locked, breathing synchronized, the weight of betrayal, perceived or real, pressing down. The world outside our hallway felt impossibly loud now. Every creak of the floor, every distant car horn, a reminder that nothing was safe. And yet, even in that suffocating tension, there was a spark, a defiance neither of us could hide. We weren't going to run. Not yet. Not when everything we had been suppressing, the stolen glances, the tension, the quiet obsession, was suddenly exposed, vulnerable, and painfully alive. I leaned slightly closer. She didn't pull away. The storm outside might have shifted the landscape, but in that narrow hallway, for the briefest of moments, it was still just her and me, teetering on the edge of the impossible. The hallway felt impossibly narrow, the air thick with the tension we'd been carrying for months. I could feel every heartbeat in my chest, every tremor in my fingers as I held hers. She wasn't pulling away this time, and neither was I. "Catherine," I whispered, voice raw, I can't pretend anymore. I've tried to stay away. I've tried to." My words faltered. How could I explain that every thought, every idle moment, every night I spent staring at the ceiling was about her? Her eyes were wide, glossy, searching mine like she was trying to read the corners of my soul. "I know," she said, almost too quietly. Her hand brushed the back of mine. I felt it too. Every day, every hour. And I hate it. I hate that it's like this. That we can't, not yet. I swallowed, my pulse thrumming like a drum in my ears. But maybe we can. Not perfectly. Not safely. But maybe. I trailed off, unsure if I even had the right to hope. She stepped closer, her breath mingling with mine, warm and familiar. I could smell her perfume, something floral, earthy, impossibly hers, and it made the world shrink until it was just us. I don't want to hurt anyone, she admitted. Her voice shook slightly, betraying the calm facade she always carried. But I don't want to pretend I don't feel this either. I nodded, words unnecessary. Everything I wanted to say, the longing, the obsession, the fear, was already written in my eyes, in the way I held her hand, in the tremor that ran through me when our shoulders brushed. We stayed like that for a long moment, suspended in something delicate and dangerous. The world outside paused. Every rule, every reason, every fear seemed to dissolve in the intensity of being close, of finally acknowledging what we both wanted and feared in equal measure. Then she leaned slightly, just a fraction closer, a silent question hanging in the air. I could feel it, see in the tilt of her head, the bite of her lip, the warmth radiating from her body. And I knew, if I reached forward, if I let go of reason for one heartbeat, everything could change. But just as I opened my mouth, just as I moved an inch closer, the distant sound of the front door opening shattered the bubble. Reality rushed back in. The living room, the kitchen, the world where consequences existed. Catherine's hand tightened around mine, and our eyes met, wide and unblinking. "We can't," she whispered, though her fingers didn't move. And I understood. Not fully, not yet, but enough to know that this electric, terrifying, impossible thing between us was real. We stood there, close enough to feel each other's warmth, yet far enough that the world could intrude, could break us apart. And somehow, for the first time, I felt both terror and relief. Because we saw each other, really saw each other, and that, whatever came next, was worth everything. The hallway was silent, our hands still touching, breaths mingling. And in that quiet, I realized that whether we crossed the line tonight or waited, whether the world allowed us or not, we were already irrevocably intertwined. And sometimes that was enough. The apartment was quiet after the storm of the morning, sunlight now soft and forgiving, spilling across the kitchen tiles. I still held her hand, but this time it was different, lighter, patient, unhurried. No panic, no fear pressing at her ribs. Just us, suspended in a fragile calm that felt like something we'd earned. Catherine looked at me then, really looked, and I saw every layer she'd been holding back. The worry, the longing, the moments of hesitation that had defined the weeks we'd spent orbiting each other. Her lips curved into a small, tentative smile, the kind that whispered promises without needing words. "I don't know how we'll make this work," she said softly. Her thumb brushed over my knuckles. "I don't know if it will ever be easy." I shook my head, voice steady but gentle. "It doesn't have to be perfect. Just real. That's enough. We'll figure the rest out." Her laugh was soft, a little breathless, carrying relief and disbelief. She leaned against the counter, eyes flicking to mine, daring me to see what she saw. "You're insane," she said, shaking her head, though the warmth in her gaze betrayed her. "Maybe," I admitted, smiling, "but so are you." We sat down at the kitchen table, side by side, letting the quiet fill in the cracks that words could not. Every brush of our fingers across the surface, every glance, every pause was a conversation of its own, a language only we spoke. I realized then that the moments we'd feared, the risks, the stolen glances, the near disasters, they weren't obstacles anymore. They were the proof that what we felt mattered. I remember the messages, the tension, the almost kisses and almost confessions. And I realized that none of it had been wasted. Each heartbeat, Each stolen second had led us here, to this, two people who understood each other so completely it hurt, yet also healed. "Promise me something," Catherine said suddenly, squeezing my hand. "Promise we'll be honest, even when it's hard, even when it's scary." "I promise," I said, and the word carried all the way to the months we'd spent circling each other, hiding and revealing in equal measure. She leaned closer, resting her head on my shoulder. And for the first time in months, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this us was real. That the age, the expectations, the risks, none of it could take away what we had found in each other. We didn't rush. We didn't force a grand gesture or a dramatic confession. We simply existed there, together, breathing, letting the weight of our lives settle into something gentle. The quiet was ours. The tension had softened into something richer, something enduring. And as the sunlight warmed her hair and her fingers laced with mine, I realized that we had crossed the impossible line. Not with a kiss or a declaration, not with certainty, but with truth, understanding, and the willingness to face whatever came next, together. We had survived the fear, the guilt, the almost betrayals. And we had chosen each other. The world outside could wait.